The sitcom wife has had numerous variations in TV history, from nagging naysayer to a trophy wife to a hyper-competent, stern, wet blanket. Over the years, the evolution of the sitcom wife is a mirror of how societal norms have shifted. Yet, whether the sitcom is a classic, a throwback, updated, or irreverent, it's striking just how much holds true about this character for decades. She's pretty, smart, and competent. Nearly perfect.
I'm sure there are things about me you wish were different that you hold back on.
You're perfect.
Yeah.
She's married to a guy who's decidedly not. And by most metrics, she seems wildly out of his league.
You got one of the good guys.
She's the voice of reason, the straight character, while her childish husband is the funny guy.
Phil, honey, please be. Watch the door.
She patiently puts up with her husband's ridiculous antics.
$5,000 for a couple of dolls? Are you out of your mind?
But inside, she's stressed out and feels like she might crack.
Could I have 2 slices of bologna?
One at a time!
She's a truly impressive person who reveals just how much effort and expertise goes into successfully raising a family and managing a household.
Why don't you just go back to your hot rod and let me take care of this?
Yet her society and family don't sufficiently value and appreciate all that effort.
Never a thought for the woman who spent her life getting you into that grave.
The problem is that the sitcom wife is like a human complaint about a dissatisfactory state of affairs for housewives and stay-at-home moms. But for so long, her story has just had her begrudgingly accepting that, despite so much societal progress, her situation largely stays the same. In recent years, we're finally seeing that formula getting broken open. So what happens to the sitcom wife now? For as long as there have been sitcoms, there's been the husband and wife dynamic that leans toward an all too familiar style. The husband as a dim-witted, childish oaf with all the crazy ideas, and the wife as a sensible sourpuss who's there to ruin all his fun. Family sitcoms, like all stories, need to have conflict to be interesting. So what better way to generate both friction and humor than 2 bickering spouses with opposing views? Cue the laugh track.
Tim, I don't want to be a nagging wife.
Well, then how will I recognize you?
That's not to say sitcom wives aren't often funny, lovable, human, and iconic cultural treasures, sometimes with a high degree of complexity. But so often, especially in older sitcoms, the standard sitcom husband gets to drive the action of the story, deliver the majority of the jokes and schemes, and provide the overall point of view. The wife may be the smarter, better-looking voice of reason, but she's secondary and not having as much fun. Stereotypical sitcom wives are juggling a lot of stress and burdens. They have a household to run, a family to take care of, and often a spouse who's not a true partner. But more often an extra obstacle, or essentially another kid for her to mother.
Go to sleep.
Okay, if it'll make you happy, I'll go to sleep. I'll sleep like a baby.
As women's rights and expectations have shifted, that has updated the sitcom wife. But arguably, it's also put pressure on the sitcom wife to be even more impeccable, to also manage a career and be immaculately informed and educated, in addition to sweating all the practical details of her life. Even as sitcoms like Married with Children and The Simpsons put irreverent, satirical spins on the family sitcom in the 80s and 90s, the sitcom wife didn't necessarily get much more agency. She remained a portrait of female dissatisfaction and resentment that apparently couldn't be solved. It seems unfair, not to mention unrealistic, that husbands on sitcoms get to sit back and enjoy themselves while their wives are there to serve them and fix their problems. And if that is the dynamic in a real relationship, that's not healthy, as Parks and Recreation points out through its early missed match couple, Ann and Andy.
Babe, I'm out of milk.
As it's become more common that the husband isn't the only breadwinner of the family, this has led to more subversiveness and creative freedom in the depiction of a TV wife who's not a stock worrywart. The dark comedy Kevin Can F*** Himself switches back and forth between a bright, multi-camera sitcom and a gritty, single-camera anti-hero drama to show the intense, fluctuating emotions of a mistreated sitcom wife.
I'm fine.
WandaVision also ambitiously unpacks the evolution of the sitcom wife to expose how much artifice has always been part of this lovable but superhuman and not totally real archetype.
My wife and her flying saucers.
My husband and his indestructible head.
Aren't we a fine pair?
But how did this fiction even come about? As tempting as it is to generalize, there are a lot of nuances and complexities in iconic sitcom wives through the years, and many did a lot to advance representations of women in a mainstream context in their eras. Here's a quick jaunt through some of the most influential examples. The sweethearted, perfect homemakers. With pearls, apron, and a warm smile, impeccably dressed, home-based Leave It to Beaver's June Cleaver represented the 1950s American dream and post-World War II values, as well as a specific societal model for women. The dutiful wife and mother who finds fulfillment in homemaking and child-rearing.
Ward, do you think you're being a little bit hard on the Beaver?
Mary Tyler Moore's Laura Petrie signaled a subtle shift in the sitcom wife archetype on The Dick Van Dyke Show, breaking some molds by wearing pants instead of June Cleaver's dresses, and being an equal partner to her husband, engaging in witty banter and exhibiting a vibrant personality.
I don't think it's Diane Mosby's fault.
Well, who's then?
And of course, there's the earlier I Love Lucy. Lucille Ball's zany antics and unforgettable charm showed us that, even in the 1950s, wives could be hilariously unpredictable. Lucy was a revolutionary outlier in so many ways. She was the star of her show, the funniest character, the first major sitcom star to break rules, like featuring an interracial couple in pregnancy on screen. Perhaps most importantly, she was lovably imperfect, with quirks that made life joyously fun.
I think we're fighting a losing game!
No list would be complete without the Brady Bunch's Carol Brady. Blended family chaos? No sweat for Carol, who kept the crew in check with love, understanding, and perfect hair.
If you carry a joke too far, somebody can get hurt.
The impressive Game Changers. On All in the Family, Edith Bunker challenged the notion of the submissive sitcom wife. Though overshadowed by her loud and bigoted husband, Edith had a heart and a moral compass that often served as the show's conscience, and her character reflected the fight for women's rights in the 70s.
I may not go to church ever. What good does it do?
And The Cosby Show's Claire Huxtable signified another critical shift, as the sitcom wife could be a career woman who was also an attentive mother and wife. A successful lawyer, Claire juggled her work and home life with grace and humor, offering a new model and arguably raised expectations at a time when more women were juggling professional careers and family. The Challengers. Loud, proud, and not afraid to voice her opinions, Roseanne flipped the script on the idealized TV wife and mom. She won over audiences by keeping it real, warts and all, and made a point of lowering expectations.
Utah housewife stabs husband 37 times.
I admire her restraint.
In a broader comedic style, Peggy Bundy was an intentional inversion of the sitcom wife stereotype in Married with Children. Brash, lazy, and materialistic, Peggy directly countered the image of the perfect homemaker. While some critics saw her as a negative portrayal of women, others saw Peggy as a critique of the unrealistic expectations placed on women and wives.
You look beat!
The animated, perfect satire. Meanwhile, in animation, we had irreverent twists on the perfect family that, despite that intention of critique, still became models to real families in many ways as they grew into enduring fixtures.
You see this? It symbolizes that she's my property and I own her.
Marge Simpson's story is less about playing the straight character to Homer's idiocy, and more about her struggle to maintain her own identity beyond just a homemaker and mother. She has episodes and story arcs exploring her own identity with more depth, while the longevity of the show has allowed Marge to evolve over time to reflect shifts in societal attitudes and the complexities of modern wife and motherhood.
It wouldn't be right to buy something just for me.
Family Guy's Lois Griffin, similarly, is a play on the traditional sitcom wife, and in this case, she has a dark side, engaging in activities such as kleptomania, with a somewhat neglectful parenting style and an evil genius baby who secretly hates her.
I'll be back tomorrow for the $80, and I'm taking your welcome mat.
the balanced, too-good-for-him wife. Despite examples that pushed the envelope, in the 90s and 2000s, we saw a re-emergence of an updated version of the traditional sitcom wife, the hot woman out of her husband's league who's enduring his silly antics, perfectly encapsulated by King of Queens Carrie Heffernan.
Do you understand what Mommy is saying?
Home Improvement's Jill was a balanced image of the sitcom wife, struggling with real-life issues like career dissatisfaction and raising 3 boys. Her character was not just a foil to her husband Tim, but at the same time, she was pretty much the grown-up while he was the funny star. Debra Barone in Everybody Loves Raymond's killer sarcasm was the way she dealt with her in-laws from hell, but all her humor could make her husband come across as a bit underwhelming.
You know what? I'm tired. Could you just call yourself an idiot?
The joyously quirky wife. One way that the sitcom wife can get free of the wet blanket cliches is by expressing her joyous quirkiness that perhaps we can trace back to Lucy Ricardo. Kitty Foreman on That 70s Show and Linda Belcher in Bob's Burgers are fun-loving, with an eccentric, sometimes a wild side.
Wine helps me drink.
They're warm and generally satisfied with their family lives. Their role isn't to radically challenge the traditional family unit, but they're individuals who are free to be silly and weird.
Oh, honey. Were your father and I having intercourse? Mom!
The sarcastic ex-wife. With her sharp wit and endless patience, Cheryl David began as the foil. As the pretty, smart, and sarcastic yet tolerant wife of the neurotic Larry David, Cheryl helped support the series' humor. But her character departed from the more traditional sitcom wives, because her patience with Larry isn't bottomless. She eventually becomes Larry's very rich ex-wife and gets together with handsome, perfect Ted Danson.
Did you have sex with my sister Becky?
Who said that?
Becky.
The bad wife/mom. Taking the domestic unhappiness further, a character like Arrested Development's Lucille Bluth is the openly bad wife and mother, whose flaws are hilariously enjoyable to the viewer.
I love all my children equally.
I don't care for Joe.
The savvy, no-nonsense matriarch. Importantly, some sitcom wives have offered more culturally specific windows into the joys and trials of being a wife and mom. Everybody Hates Chris's no-nonsense Rochelle offers a funny yet significant representation of motherhood within the context of a working-class black family in the 80s. Her tough love and no-nonsense attitude keep her family in line while giving us laughs.
I'm trying to get some sleep.
Well, I am so sorry for trying to have a conversation with my husband!
And Jessica Huang's ambitious and strict nature brought the immigrant experience front and center with humor and heart on Fresh Off the Boat. As a Taiwanese-American family adjusting to life in Florida, who eventually becomes successful in her individual career, Jessica shows her individuality while dealing with numerous cultural clashes and confronting stereotypes about Asian women.
But he's a doctor.
No.
You're always talking about the year of a dog.
That's a stretch.
More modern portrayals of marriage are changing, and traditional ones are being dissected. When it comes to the frustratingly childish sitcom husband, naturally, people may wonder why all these stereotypical sitcom wives stay with him in the first place. Kevin Can F*** Himself is a show all about this very question.
Why wouldn't you just leave?
Leave? Like it's easy?
But the series concludes that leaving wouldn't be enough. The sitcom wife craves a deeper revenge for all she's suffered. Today, we can point to a wider range of earnest examples of sitcom wives, ones who are less defined by their marital status or expected to represent a monolithic version of wife and motherhood, but more varied in their individual identities and story arcs. Dismantling the sitcom wife trope, sitcoms have addressed how women are looked down upon or judged for things that men don't face the same scrutiny for, such as balancing work while raising a family. In Parks and Recreation, Leslie Knope addresses being asked about her kids during a political campaign, something her husband, Ben Wyatt, is never asked about.
Do you miss your kids while you're at work? Yes, of course I do. Everybody does.
Yeah, and by the way, no one's ever asked me that question.
Similarly, in Modern Family, Claire and Phil's dynamic starts off as the typical homemaker/breadwinner dynamic, but with a key difference. Claire's quiet dissatisfaction isn't just something she has to learn to live with.
There's There's something about going to work that makes you feel like you're, I don't know, worth something. No offense, Mom.
Eventually, Claire becomes the bigger breadwinner, and Phil takes on many of their traditionally nurturing parental roles. So they navigate a balanced partnership that works for their particular family.
I went to college, you know, and I just want to be able to contribute to my kids' education, and I want to be able to buy my husband a present with my own money.
Overall, the show's depiction of diverse families clearly makes the point that there's no longer one way to be a sitcom wife or to define the TV nuclear family. In Young Sheldon, the Big Bang Theory spinoff, Mary Cooper is a devoutly religious and caring mother of a boy genius. While the show is set in the late 80s and early 90s, this mother of a child who is profoundly different from his peers still gives modern viewers a lens into the joys and challenges of raising a gifted child. Until 2022, Blackish's Rainbow Johnson was a doc by day and a mom by night, both the emotional center of the family and a strong professional role model. She directly confronts timely issues, reflecting the show's broader commitment to addressing significant societal topics. Sitcoms in recent decades also stay with beloved female characters who become wives or moms yet aren't redefined by that, like Lily on How I Met Your Mother or Pam in The Office. Just like with any fleshed out character on TV, the sitcom wife doesn't have to be just one thing. Yes, she can be sensible, but she can also be silly, complicated, hardworking, aloof, flawed, and all the other things we can expect from a real person. And it all starts by challenging gender stereotypes to work towards positive change. That's The Take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.